President Obama wraps up his West Coast trip in Denver today, the final stop in a three-state swing where he's pitching a starkly different message than the one he ran on in 2008.
Even though, my hair's a little grayer now, even though, I turned 50 and, my girls say I look distinguished, but Michelle says I just look old. Even though there have been setbacks and there have been frustrations, and sometimes the pace of change is painfully slow, I want you to understand that we've got more work to do.
California Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass was with the president in Los Angeles this week, and she made it all the way across country to join us now. Congresswoman, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
The president has talked about this on and off for a while now, that this is not 2008. Now, you were heavily involved in the 2008 campaign in California. What's different this time, both with the president and with the country?
Well, I think the most important difference is the unemployment rate is still very high. But, in 2008 in California, I was in the legislature serving as speaker, and we were in a complete free fall in terms of our economy. Mm-hmm. So the crisis hit California a little earlier than it did the rest of the country. I think when we look back, though, and reflect, especially on the 111th Congress, a tremendous amount was accomplished in the first couple of years. It's been since January, I think, when very little has happened.
Let me ask you that, because the president often says, especially when he's talking to his base, whether it's donors or activists, he says, we've got a lot more done than we get credit for. Number one, do you agree with that? And number two, why is that? Is the message not getting out enough? They're not doing a good enough job in taking credit for what actually has passed?
Well, I think an absolute tremendous amount was accomplished. When he came into office, our economy was in a complete free fall. And although the unemployment rate is still very high, things are more stable than they were before. And I remember that very acutely. The stimulus that took place early in his presidency was very helpful to California because we had such a huge deficit. When you have a Republican leadership that says their number one goal is to make sure he's only a one-term president and to pretty much go almost 300 days of this session with no legislation for jobs in the House, you can look at this Congress and refer to it as a do-nothing Congress.
Now, you brought up the Republican leadership. The president has come out this week and said he's going to do some executive orders on things like housing, student loans.
He has to act. He has no choice.
And the Republicans, not surprisingly, have responded. Here's House Speaker John Boehner. Let's listen. We'll come back and talk about it.
The president says we can't afford to wait. Well, guess what? I agree with the president. We've got 15 bills that are sitting over in the United States Senate. It's time for the Senate to work with the House and to work with the president to help find common ground to move our economy forward and get the American people back to work.
Well, let me just tell you, I don't know what those 15 bills are, but some of them are very frightening, and I hope the Senate doesn't act on deregulating the FDA, rolling back regulations on the EPA, the attacks on women. Some of the legislation that has come out of this Congress, I think the only thing that's saving the president for having to veto numerous bills is the Senate not acting.
But let me ask you, don't people expect Congress, and I say Congress broadly, obviously we have a Republican-controlled House, we have a Democratic-controlled Senate.
Right.
Don't people expect Congress to do something? Because in the CBS New York Times poll that came out last night, congressional approval, now don't take this personally.
I don't.
Congressional approval, 9%. Congressional disapproval, 84%. I think the only people that you're better than at the moment are journalists and used car salesmen. So I can't really speak. But don't they have an expectation that Congress does something?
And they absolutely should have an expectation.
But doesn't some of that fall on Democrats as well, or not?
Well, I don't think it does in the House. I mean, I truly don't. I think if you look at what was accomplished in the 111th Congress, numerous bills were passed. There were numerous bill signings. A lot was done. In the 112th Congress, not much has been done because you have leadership that says their number one goal is to make sure that he only serves one term.
Let me talk to you quickly about 2012.
Sure.
This is obviously, the president has acknowledged, this is going to be a harder election than 2008. What does he need to do? Give me the bumper sticker or the 30-second answer that the president needs to go to America and say this is why you need to reelect.
Well, first of all, I think he's already doing that with the jobs bill. But I think what he needs to do is to continue to do the executive orders, because clearly Congress is not going to act. So he did an executive order on housing. He did an executive executive
You're fine
order.
with that as a member of Congress, that he's end running in some ways Congress?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's got to. We have to have action. So to have action on student loans, to have action on housing, to have action on jobs. But now I do think that all of us have a responsibility to play. And so what I've been doing, for example, in my district is having numerous community meetings and telling people that we need to rally and demand that Congress pass the jobs bill and pass it in its entirety, not just cherry pick the pieces. The president put together a bipartisan bill, pieces that Republicans have supported in the past, but because he has put it forward, now all of a sudden they don't support it.
Let's go from the sublime to the not ridiculous, but the lighter fare. I mentioned earlier that you were in California with the president this week, and he made an interesting stop that
Yes.
I know you joined him at. Let's watch a little bit of that.
Okay.
I'm eating the wings, got the hot sauce on there.
Yeah.
The fancy presidential limousines smelling like chicken. And we were actually going to a fundraiser with Will Smith and Jada and I didn't realize it was so close. So suddenly we pull up and my sleeves are rolled up and I got a spot on my tie. And there we go. My fingers, I'm looking for one of those wet ones,
Right.
to see chicken on my teeth. It was not elegant, but outstanding chicken.
Outstanding chicken. Look at there.
Outstanding chicken.
Okay, so the obvious question is, where were you guys and how can we find that place? Because I know you were with him. Tell us about it.
I can tell you exactly where it is.
And there, by the way, there you are with the President of the United States.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I just have to tell you it was an incredible honor when I was asked to ride in the presidential limousine and to participate in that motorcade and have it go through the African American and Latino community in Los Angeles. I'll tell you one thing. People complain in Los Angeles when the motorcade comes through. I guarantee you nobody was complaining that day. They were so excited. People were literally jumping up and down, and people told me later that folks had tears in their eyes because they understand it's not about celebrity. This is LA.
Important for him to do these sorts of things.
Absolutely,
though, right?
absolutely. But it clearly is not about celebrity because this is Los Angeles and we see celebrities.
Right.
It's about history, and people understood that. So we went to Roscoe Chicken and Waffles, which is in my district, as well as the two fundraisers were in my district as well. And it's on the corner of Pico and La Brea, and the chicken is great.
Hold on.
And I just have to tell you that when he walked in, people were absolutely in shock. People spontaneously started shouting 4 more years. He took the time to shake every single person's hand in that restaurant, and the restaurant was packed. And so it was very, very exciting.
Congresswoman Karen Bass, California, Pico and La Brea.
Pico and La Brea.
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.